All right, we're back. We got some people that are still getting some coffee or whatever, but we're back. Let's talk about the next piece. So again, we've got our email pattern, and we need to talk about what the pattern is. And one thing that this PowerPoint does talk about is what are these special meta characters that we use with regular expression patterns. Okay, this is really, really important to look at. Let's take a look. So the dot by itself, the dot says, matches any single character. So it's any character, right? And remember, with our pattern, we use the slash dot. The backslash dot says, let's use an escape. An escape. And it's an escape character that says, I'm looking actually for the dot. It's not a matching pattern. I'm not looking to do this, match any single character. I'm actually looking to, for the actual dot itself. Okay. Here's the thing: the backslash says identifies the next character as a literal value. Okay, that's interesting. Yes. All right. So that means that and this is the dash. The dash says identifies a possible range of characters to match. So then let's go back. Let's go back, right? So I've got two. I've got a backslash, right? And then I have a double backslash, right? So let me take a look at this. So double backslash, right? And then dash. Why? The double backslash says that I could possibly have in this range a backslash. That's what it's saying here. I could include a backslash, right? But what I'm actually saying is, right, that between this and this, right here, up to here, is another expression. From here, as an example, to here, to this backslash, right? It's hard for me to highlight it because it kind of highlights weird on the PowerPoint. But it's basically saying that it's from these to some other characters, to any other A to Z kind of characters that are here. So I need the dot, and it could include other kind of alphanumeric characters. That's what it's basically saying. Okay. Let's go back. So again, the caret says matches characters at the beginning of the string. The dollar sign says matches characters at the end of the string, right? So between these two things, if I put both of them in place, it means the whole entire thing, like I'm repeating myself, but the whole entire regular expression has to be in play, right? From the beginning to end to have a matching pattern, all right? If I only had one or the other, then it would be okay if the last part of the string matched, if it was just the dollar sign. And if it was the caret, only the first part of the string would be okay, and you could have anything else after, right? But in our case, in most cases, especially for what we're doing, you use both of them, especially for a strict pattern like email, right? Round brackets, like I said, specifies required characters to include in a matching pattern, right? And then square brackets, so this is required, right? And square brackets basically says, hey, take a look at some alternates or start matching. If I put the caret inside of my square brackets, it's basically saying don't match. These are the ones that I don't want you to include in the pattern, right? That's the difference between the caret being outside and the caret being inside the square brackets, right? And if I put the pipe character, it means either one or the other type of, it's an alternate. It's like an or, right? So this is a great little reference card right here for regular expressions, right? It doesn't describe all of them, and there's other special characters we can use, like for example the \d character that we use a lot, that basically says any alphanumeric any numeric character will be the \d. Yes. Memorize? No, I don't memorize a darn thing, right? If I have to look it up, I look it up, right? And the reason for that is because unless I want to make a specific pattern, I can figure it out because I have the building blocks. I sit there and I want to try, and then of course I test until my pattern is correct, right? But I don't memorize anything, right? Guys, and if we have to memorize something in computers, something's not right, right? You should know some of it, right? Know it. Like, for example, for loops, variable declarations, right? Conditional statements, that should be part of your DNA when you program, right? Those kind of things. Memorization, I don't think there's any need for memorization these days with Google, right? You don't have to Google, you don't have to memorize anything. And I don't make you memorize things for your practical test either, right? I say, open book. Does it help you? No. Either you know it or you don't, right? But you should know where to get the information. You should know what it can do. One of the things that I do as a developer to build stuff up is, if I know what a language can do, I have an idea of where to go to solve a problem, right? And that's what we're teaching you here. right? Is here. This is another tool for you to do search patterns or to look at patterns for validation purposes or whatever. Maybe you wouldn't know that this even existed if we didn't talk about it. And then if you didn't know what to search for when you do a Google search, right? So when I say my Google foo is strong, it's because I know what to search for, right? And this is what I'm trying to teach you, not to memorize. Memorizing is not really effective, right? So if you go through here, it tells you the same stuff that I've already told you. Let's go to this piece here. So this is some other things you can do. Remember I talked about the plus. So if I have square brackets and the plus character, right? The plus character is special. It says one or more of the preceding characters must match the plus. But the star says that 0 or more. Well, 0 or more means it's optional, right? So if I have the star pattern, it means I can have 0 or more of the preceding pattern that I can use to, for my pattern match. And then you can also use the curly braces, for example, to specify a specific number of characters that I want, right? That matches the pattern. So how many matches do I want? I have 4 of these types of things in my previous pattern. So here's the previous pattern. I want 4 of these, right? I want 3 of these. I want 2 of these, right? So it has to be duplicated twice for it to match the pattern, right? Okay. I'm not going to look at subpatterns and so on. The dash character we've talked about before. This is what I want to get to. So these are special characters that mean something too. For example, if I go \d, it says a numeric character. That's what it means. It's a numeric character. So if I combine numeric characters with these curly braces, I can say I want 5 numeric characters. If I want to make a phone number, and the first part of the phone number is a numeric character, 0, 1, 2, 3. That's not true because I can't start with 0, right? What does a phone number start with? It has to start with at least, I think, 2, right? I don't think you can start with 1 as a phone number. I think you start from 2 to 9, right? If I'm not wrong. I don't think there's any phone numbers that starts with 1, 1, 2, 3, something like that. That's different. That would be an option. So the international code would be an optional piece. So with the star on the end that says you can have 1 or not of these. So if I include that piece, 0, 1, or 0, 1, 1, or 0 something, I can start with the 0 to whatever numeric character. I could have, typically there are 2 or 3 characters that start off, or 1, actually 1, 2, or 3, because sometimes you can just have 1, 905, blah, 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 right? So then, you have to create that string or that pattern. So there'd be sub patterns, and then to make up the big pattern. That's what we're doing. And you start off small, right? And again, you can get some interesting patterns online. So let's go back to this one. So \d then says numeric characters. \D says non-numeric characters. And it's the same way. W and capital W, D and capital D, S and capital S. And what these things do is say, okay, I want to look for only alphanumeric characters. That's the W. That means any alphanumeric character, right? And this is kind of useful pattern, so you don't have to make a long string. Like you can shortcut it with these characters here. Okay. Again, I'm just looking at what these things mean. Okay, these are interesting flags. Remember we talked about the regular expression constructor. You have the pattern, comma, and the attributes. These are attributes that you can put in. These are some of them. One of them is the G for global. So it determines whether the search for all possible matches within a string, right? So I look at the entire string, and then if I'm looking for the entire string and only part of the string, global. All right, I, which is really important. I'm going to ignore case. So it doesn't matter lowercase, uppercase, it's going to match, right? Again, it's like doing 2 lower or 2 upper. If I want to, I'm searching for a particular thing, I can ignore my case. And those are the 2 I use. Multi-line, we usually use that in a text area. So if I'm using a text area, I'm searching for specific patterns in the text area. I can search multiple lines, right? If I'm looking for a specific pattern, or I'm searching for a particular thing. Okay? And I don't think we have time for additional, because we're at 1:53. I don't think we have additional time for more examples. But I invite you to look at to Google it. Like again, we did this before. If I Google something like a phone number pattern, so 10-digit phone number regular expression, regex, right? As an example, you might get some really good examples of what this looks like, and you can validate it for yourself. There's like Stack Overflow, and you can see that here's the expression that I'm getting. So again, I'm getting the caret, right? Caret means at the beginning of the string, right? And then the $sign means that this whole thing has to be in effect, right? Beginning and end, right? And then you can analyze it. So I have inside the first part, which is this one, right? And now notice I have the question mark. Okay, let's go back to my PowerPoint, right? Because if you don't know what the question mark is, I'm gonna hit the question mark up here, right? Or was it up here? It specifies that the preceding character is optional, right? That's what it means, and it would be optional, right? So let's analyze this pattern for a second, right? So this is optional. This whole part is optional. That's what it means. So it's optional that I have, looking at the, again, a backslash plus, which means a plus is something you can include, because I can go plus as part of the pattern when I do the long distance piece or the area code, right? Like plus 91 is a good example of that. That's what matches, right? And then backslash D says any numeric character, right, from a range of at least 1 to 2 characters, but not include, or actually to 2 characters in this particular case. This is one of those that says when I say 2, it means 2. It doesn't mean up to 2, right? And then backslash S, right, which means, again, backslash S means an S would be there as well, right? Potentially. So this is one of the patterns. So plus and S is possible, as well as a character, a set of characters between 0 and 9, and it could be at least one or 2 characters, 1 or 2. Okay. Now this whole piece is optional. This starts with a plus, right? Because sometimes you don't have that. So this pattern would match, this pattern would match, and then they tell you the next piece. All right. So if I look at the next expression, now I'm looking at a bracket. I'm saying it could be a bracket. The question mark says I might include a bracket like this for the area code, or I might not, as we analyze the expression. And if you go through it, you can see what these things mean. I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but that's how I would kind of Google it, take a look, try it out, and if it doesn't work, you can look through and go, no, I didn't want that. Like if I want to make it only for North America, I'm going to assume that there's no long distance. So I'm only serving, let's say I make a form, and you're signing up for something that only is available in Canada and the US, right? So I wouldn't care about the area code for long distance for overseas, international area code piece. I might take that out. I might say, no, I don't want pluses or the area code. It's only for US and Canada. I might specify that in my form, and so that I wouldn't need this whole thing, right? And what would I chop off? Probably this piece right here. I wouldn't need this piece, this whole piece right here, up to here, not included in the caret. I need the caret because that means my form is still going to include this piece, but this part here I wouldn't use, right? Why? Because I know the pattern of regular expressions. I can take an existing regular expression that someone nicely has made for me and use it, right? I'm not going to reinvent the wheel if I don't have to. I'm going to analyze it. I'm not going to assume anything. Remember, I told you guys that. Don't assume anything. And if I really want to be specific, I'm going to create it myself, and I'm going to look to make sure it's been done. But I want you to know how to do it, not necessarily like, always design your own. Okay? Let's go back. And again, from a time perspective, we can't. We're just scratching the surface of this stuff anyway. Okay. And you're shaking your head. You're like, why are we scratching the surface? Why can't we do hacking, right? Why can't we like hack a server or something? Huh? I know. I can see the smile on your face, though, the questions you've asked me before. All right. Manipulating arrays. This is the next piece. So again, we've talked about 2 things now. String manipulation, some strubs. My favorite methods. I told you what my favorite methods are. By the way, am I going to test you on this next week? Absolutely not, right? Am I going to actually ask you questions on this, on how to do this kind of stuff later on? No, but I may ask you to put in a form or update a form on one of your assignments. So in assignment number 3 that's coming up, when we're actually adding in some AJAX and JSON data, right? I may ask you to update your form as part of your assignment, because it's going to be worth a hefty 15%. So there's extra stuff that we're going to cover here. I may not give you a lab to try this stuff out, but I may ask you to do additional things in your assignment that include some of this stuff. Okay. So I mean, I can use the array class, the array keyword if I really want to, right? But typically we don't, and we've talked about this before. When I do arrays, when I declare an array, what are the 2 ways I can declare an array? Anybody? I can declare it 2 ways. How can I do an array? Come on, guys. I need some kind of input today. I'm going to ask some individual people now. What's the 2 ways I can declare a new array? Right? Curly braces? Are you sure it's curly braces? Well, let's do it with me. Do it with me up here. Here's my Visual Studio, right? So I got a bunch of examples here. Let's make an array, right? I want to call it my array, just like we said. Here's just array 101, all right? So here's my array, and I want to declare array. What are the two ways? What do I put after the equal sign, right? I could put new, and then what do I need to put on after this? This is one way, huh? Array. I could do that. Is this enough? Well, it does. It is. It's like doing var my second array, my other array. How about this? My other array is equal to this, right? Those are the two ways that I can declare arrays. I don't know about you, but I mean, this I understand. It makes more sense from a best practice perspective. You might think this might be the better way to do it. Actually, this is the most common way of doing things, you know, in JavaScript. You look at it and go, that's an array? Yeah, it's an empty array of. It's a container that doesn't include any arrays right now. And there's nothing inside the array. We don't know what kind it is. We just know it's an array. And if I hover over it, it says an array of any, right? Once I start filling the array up with stuff, we've done many, many examples of this. Like, for example, you know, I start filling an array with stuff. Like, for example, a string. So here's my string, and I say, you know, first string. Then I put another string in there. I'm initializing. This is a way of initializing array, second string. Array 101, right? And then maybe I want to put in a number. Well, first of all, let's just put in the strings. If I put the strings in there, it says my array is of type string, right? A string array, right? But JavaScript, because it uses duck typing, we don't have a type. I can put whatever things I want in the array. I can dump it full of garbage if I want, right? Like, for example, 5. I don't know, it's just random, right? Or I want to put in some kind of object, right? That has a couple of properties. Like, for example, ID, right? And my ID is you know, 1, and then my object also has a name property, right? Which you know, has a value of Tom, right? That's valid. It's weird, but it's valid. And if I save that, if I go over here, you can see that my other array takes a couple of, there's two types it can take. It says it's either a string, this is what JavaScript is trying to say, or it's a number, or it's even some kind of object, which is, that's what it is. So something. It's one of those three. I don't have any yet because that means that would have to be some other thing, right? And if I keep on adding different things, it'll eventually go to any. I can add anything I want. But it's going to try and figure out what you want, right? Typically, this is really bad form to do this, right? We don't want to do this. Remember, I talked about this lots before. You want to make your arrays contiguous. You want to have the same kind of information inside, right? Just from a best practice perspective. Remember, I also said that just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it, right? You can do this, but it doesn't mean you should. JavaScript is notorious for this kind of stuff, and this is where developers hate JavaScript, because you can do this kind of stuff, and it's the cause of many, many, many bugs, right? That can exist because you expect to get back an array or a string or whatever you're getting back, and you're actually getting something else, right? Because it can take it, right? There's no typing. It's not going to say, hey, you're returning some wrong data into my array. It's going to say, okay, sure, I'll take it. What, an object? Yeah, I'll take it. What, a number? I'll take that too, right? You know, it'll keep adding whatever you want. You guys get enough coffee or what? Where's the other guy? Huh. Right. So there it is. This is my array, my other array. So my other array, it can hold any kind of data you want, and this is one way of initializing the array. The other way to initialize the array, of course, is to start with an empty array like this, and then we can you know, use the index method. Like, so for example, my other array, and then my first index is equal to, I don't know, a string, like, you know, first string. We can do it this way too, and sometimes we do it this way. All right. So if I look at this, you can see that it's an array of any, and I don't get any typing because of the way I've declared it. It's an array of any. It stays an array of any, right? Unless I initialize it up here, JavaScript doesn't know what it is. Right now, it's an array of any, and so therefore, JavaScript, they'll take whatever you put into it. So very little typing that we get here, and none really. Again, arrays like strings, we can use the slice method. Very, very you know, useful method that we can use, right? It's almost identical to using the slice method. I'm not going to go over it again because we've already kind of gone over it. Let's go back up here. Here's an example of what they've got online where it says the largest states, so Alaska, Texas, California, and so on. Obviously, this is something that's been done from a US perspective, right? But it works with us. We want to slice starting at, what am I starting at? 0, right? and going to up to but not including 5. So if I go to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, so these first 4, I'm going to slice out. So my largest states, as an example, right? And then my 5 largest states is going to contain this. It's going to create a new array, right? It's never going to modify the original. The original array is immutable for you guys. Can't touch it, right? Unless you actually specifically will go in there and change it yourself, right? Which you can do, but you can't change the contents. It won't change the contents for you. You'll keep the contents intact. You need to make a copy of or create a subarray of this one, and then this is what it'll return. It'll return Alaska, Texas, California, Montana, New Mexico, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No Arizona, right? Okay. This is something neat, and I'm gonna talk about this because manipulating elements like shifting and unshifting, and there's also pop as well, pop and push. Depending on where you want elements in the array, because remember, arrays in JavaScript aren't really arrays. They're array lists, kind of, right? You have the ability to index them like arrays, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, starting at zero-based indexing, but also you can treat them that they're like lists, right? Which is kind of, again, from a developer perspective, kind of good and bad, right? It's good because they're very flexible, right? And you can use them, and bad because sometimes what ends up happening, you get something else other than what you think you're getting. So shift and unshift, these two methods of the arrays, adds or removes elements from the beginning of the array. So if I use shift, I remove an element from, I equivalently take the element off the top of the stack, right? If you think an array as a stack of cards, right, from 0 being the top and whatever number n being the bottom, n being the bottom card, right? Then if I do shift or unshift, I take or add to the top of the stack. It's almost like I'm taking stuff off the top of the card stack, right? And similarly, I have another one. I'm not going to give you examples here for a second. I'm just going to go down to the next one. Pop and push removes things from the end of the array, right? So pop and push is the other methods. They're very similar to shift and unshift. Pop and push, what it does is it looks at the bottom card or the bottom of the stack and adds stuff to the bottom of the or the end of the array. You might think of it as the end. I want to add things to the end, right? I'm going to push onto the array, and that's exactly what we do with lists. If you look at other languages, we append onto the end of an object, a list object in another class by using the push or add method. If I use the remove, I remove from the back, right? Which is the pop method. These methods are really important if, for example, I'm doing something like I want to remove an element after I've used it, or if I'm doing the card shuffling idea, we've talked about card shuffling in C#, right? I want to pop, well, I'm not going to do pop, I'm going to unshift an element from the top of my stack if I'm doing that kind of example, right? And I'm taking the top card from the top of the array. If I think about the array as a stack of cards, right? And remember, you could do that because you could create a card class, and I can have an array of cards. Yes. Remove at you're thinking about, right? Yes, you can use slice for that, right? We just did slice, right? So slice is what we would just take the slice out of wherever that card is. You could search, right, for one of those that particular thing inside the array, the pattern that you're looking for, that particular object, right? And when you see the pattern, you can slice it out. You can take it out, right? We'll talk about that. So why is this really important? I've used arrays like this, by the way, in many languages, array lists. And when I use web game programming, if I'm making, let's say, for example, I have an array of aliens, right? This is kind of interesting, right? Instead of an array of strings and array of numbers, those are primitive objects, right? That's not where it gets interesting. It gets interesting when I have an array of aliens, and my alien gets blown up, right? But I don't want to take off any alien. I want to get that specific alien that got blown up. I want to remove them from the array of aliens because I'm going to have something called an object pool, right? I have an object pool, which is being represented by an array, and I'm going to pop that alien right out of, or slice that alien outside of my array. That's where I really can use it, right? Because remember, arrays can hold anything. You can have anything like objects. Let me give you an example of that really quickly. I don't have a lot of time, and we're running out, but let me talk about that. So let's say, for example, here's my array. There's a new array. Well, let's say I make an array that's a deck of cards, right? So here's my var. My array is a deck, right? And instead of making it an array of objects, I remember I could create a card class actually, let's just do it. We'll make a card class. And you know what? To help me out, to make it quickly, I'll go to Playgrounds here up on TypeScript, and we'll make a card class. So instead of class person, we'll make class card, right? And class card are going to have 2 properties, right? So you can make a new card. I can add new cards to the array, and I want a constructor. Sure, I can add new cards, right? And my constructor is going to have 2 public properties. One of them is going to be, as an example, and this is if I was going to use TypeScript. And I'm introducing this to you. I have an underlying reason for doing this because we're going to do TypeScript later on in this course, right? So you know where to get it. So for example, I have a card face, right? And we've done this again, which is of type string. We'll say for now. We can also use an enum for that. And we also have a value of faces and a number, right? So you have the face and then the value, right? So let's, whatever the card value is, so we'll say public, let's use the value keyword, value, and it's of type, is it string? Probably, but let's make it a number for our case. And when we do this, right, automatically it generates the card class right here. Now the card class is just a constructor, right? So I can just take this, being lazy, copy it, and go back over to my Visual Studio, and I'm gonna put it above my deck. Right, so here it is. So this is our card. I'm just going to highlight everything and format it so it looks nice for you guys, and I'll put it up on GitHub later. All right, so here it is. So here's our card, and I want to make an array of cards. Right, my deck of cards isn't going to right now. We don't have time. I would make a little function, a little algorithm that actually adds every single card on there. But for now, we're going to add a few cards. All right, so let's add a few cards. My deck is only going to have 5 cards in it, right? And I can do that. I can say it's an array of new card. Right, here's the first card that I'm going to put in, right? And maybe I'm using an anonymous object, right, that I'm putting in here. And my first, we've kind of done this before, I've touched upon it. And my face card, it's going to be the, you know what, I made this wrong. It shouldn't be faces and values. It should be faces and suits, right? And this should be, that's what it should be. So suits. Sorry about that. Suit. It'll be okay. It should be a, sorry, and they're all array, they're all anything I want them to be. For example, strings. So the first one will be like an ace, right, and the second will be spades. Like the suit, right? So this my face is the ace, and my suit is spades. There we go. And let's do the next one, new card. And I have another one for the arrays. Remember, arrays can take anything I want, and I'm giving them objects, right? Anonymous objects, mind you. So let's say the next one is a king, right, and of diamonds, right? Let's add 2 more cards just for this example, a new, and we can also space them out because it's kind of a longer example. Because remember, JavaScript doesn't care as long as I put in a semicolon at the end, right? So here's my example. It's a new card, and let's say we'll make it a jack of clubs. Okay, jack of clubs, and the new one, queen of hearts. Queen of hearts, that's a good one. Okay, one more. Okay, new card, and we'll say the 10 of spades. There we go. There's kind of a good little hand to have, right? Maybe. So I've got this, and if I hover over it, you can see that the deck has it's an object that takes faces or suits. So the deck is an array of objects that take either faces or suits, right? And again, how do I iterate through this array? What's the best way to do it? I showed you a couple of different ways of doing it, right? I could do a for loop, right, and kind of detect how many objects are in my array, right? So for up to but not including the length of my array. I could do that because the array has a length. So I could do a for loop like this. So there it is, for loop. And then my array, I'll use the index there. My array will be the deck. I could iterate this way, right? Deck length. And then I could, console out these elements. So kind of, I couldn't do a, console.log with the array, whatever the array is, wouldn't be array, it would be deck. Right, deck index, right? So I can show all the cards in my array. Let's check this out. And if I go back to my home page, you can see that I get all the faces, and I get all the the elements back, and each element of the array, if you notice, it says card, 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 card. How come I get card, 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 card back? Because this is what I'm returning, right? Make sure that I've got everything back. Here's card, new card, right? Is what I'm holding in there, right? And if I want a specific object, so I don't want just to return the deck, the objects, but I want the actual values, right? I could say my index 0, right? And then the first one would be, notice there's faces and suits, right? Because those are part of my cards. I've declared my card class up here. So if I want my face first, right? And then if I want to make up this thing, plus space, plus I go do the same thing, index, right? Plus my suit, whatever my suit is. And now, I actually add the space properly, there we go. And now what I want to do is, it's going to show me everything. And if I go back, you can see I'm going to get the ace of spades, king of diamonds, jack of clubs. So this is one way of iterating. What's the other way of iterating? And then we're kind of timing out, so we'll stop. What's the other way of iterating? What's the other way? For each. Okay, that's kind of weird, for each, right? So remember, I can type, if I go type for each for JavaScript, it's the array for each, the for each method of the array. And this is kind of really cool. So what I can do is I can say the array is called deck. All right, and then my function is an element. Here's the element of the array, which is what? The card, each card of the array, right? And then as I cycle through, so for each card of the deck, right, I want to do the same thing, right? I want to be able to kind of say, well, this card. Now, what does this give me? Look, it actually gives me the actual card. So what I can say is console log the same way. I'm just going to copy this console log and modify it, right? And instead of it being deck, I don't have deck, I have card, right? And I don't need index either because it is the whole card. So I can go card. It's a little bit, I think, a little bit more elegant when you look at this thing because now I look at the card face and the card suit, right? And let's just comment this out to see if we get the same thing. So if I go comment out, put this in storage here for a second, in deep storage, right? The comments. And let's go back. You can see that I still get the same effect, right? With all this. But the difference is this is a little sleeker. It makes more sense so for each card in the deck class, output the card face and the card suit, right? This makes more sense to me, right? There's another one. There's one more type of thing. We talked about this before. I'm going to definitely ask you to do this next time. So because you guys are sleepy and some people are playing I'm not going to say it again. Pokemon Go, right? I said it, right? Right, I can tell. So what's the other way to do it, right? What's the other way to do this thing here? There's another looping structure. I talked about it last time. Huh? What? So it's what? Do while? I guess I could use while. It's pretty ugly, right? Switch? No, that's not a loop. That's a decision structure. Larissa, what do you think? What other looping structure we talk about? We talked about there's 3. For what? For in. Ah, that's another one. For in. So if I look for it, you can see that it's here. There's a bit of a code snippet here that I could use. So for in, and this is neat. This is newer, and it's not supported across every single browser still. I recommend that you be careful with this one. So again, the key value pairs, right? So every key in the object. The object is the deck object, right? And the key is the card key. That's what it is. And then what I want to say is this deck, if deck has own property of the card, which it would, then var element is equal to object in the key, right? Which is kind of neat. So object would be deck card, right? That's what it looks like. So I want to say this same thing, right? Actually, it would be more closer to this thing, right? Where the index is the card itself. So I want to kind of do one of these, and I want to iterate, and I want to console log deck card, right? Instead of an index, I don't have an index. Index less based. Looping. Now you might look at this and go, Tom, I don't know what's best. By the way, you don't need to put the if statement if you don't have to. So if I just wanted to take this out, and let's replace this by this. There we go. It could look like that, right? So for every card in the deck, take the face and then do blah blah, right? Remember we talked about this? The card is exactly a number or the string, right? It's interesting how we look at this. Var string in deck, right? Is this correct? Am I doing it the right way? Am I returning it the right way? Be careful. Let's see what I get. Because I save. Any difference? So these are 3 different methods to do the same kind of loop. The for loop, the regular for loop, and you can use a while loop or do while loop if you really want to. I'm not really a fan of that one. Also, what's the other thing I told you guys about loops? This is a very efficient way of doing it. Why? Because I'm calculating the length of the deck every time, every iteration. Every time I go back and iterate, calculating, calculating, calculating. In a small example like this, no problems. But what if I have 1,000 alien ships, right? And I'm attacking them with my game, right? Every time I'm calculating how many are left, how many are left, how many are left. It's a bad thing to do, right? So you want to do the deck length calculation outside of the array, the loop, and put it in there. That's one thing you'd probably want to do. Also, if for whatever reason the length changes, this is really bad. You get like some kind of index out of bounds error, right? Which is also really bad to do. So I don't recommend for loops for this kind of thing that I'm doing here. For each, I like it. I like it. It's very straightforward, and we're used to it in other languages. All right. For in, like it, and I don't mind it at all, but it can be confusing because you're thinking that the card itself would be something like this. This is what I'm used to. Card.face, card.suit. This is more like a for each suit, for each link, as opposed to this one. Right? So I think it's like a little bit of a structure change, and I kind of prefer still my for each. Right? I don't prefer my for in, although Swift has for ins for whatever reason. Right? So it's kind of, it is what it is. Plus they have other weird things. Right? So again, we talked about arrays and a little bit more of manipulation. The PowerPoint, when you go through it, talks about, again, some other concepts about splicing and sorting, reversing. They have a sort method for the array as well. There's some interesting other things you can look at, concatenating between two arrays. One thing we're going to look at again, and I'm going to save this next part where it says converting between strings and arrays later on, is there's another part here that I want to look again. I want to see this again. There's one that's join and split. We're going to do these ones next week. And the reason for that is because when I use AJAX, I want to be able to convert from and to JSON, right? And there's some really cool conversion algorithms you can use, or conversion methods you can use right from here, which are down in the dumps on the bottom here, right here. The two ones are parse and stringify. And parse means I want to parse a string and make it into JSON. And the other one is I want to take a JSON object and put it into a string with stringify. So I'm going to talk about this after slide 59 or so next week when we talk about AJAX, okay? Questions? All right, guys, thank you so much. See you next week. Thank you guys for attending. You got problems? Okay. You got issues? I'll come to you after it's done. For the rest of you guys, I'll see you next week. For some of you who are with me on C#, I'll see you on Friday. And remember that Friday we don't have for people who are doing C# with me, we don't have a quiz or a lab, right? We don't have nothing this week for Friday. We might have a lab on Friday for C#, but no quiz, okay? Because quiz we're pushing it off 1 week, okay? Thank you so much, guys. See you next week.